Hi, everyone. I'm Mike. I'm a junior at Brown University and I study music and psychology. So, welcome to my event. It's great to see you all here today. I think we can start off with a short video that I found on Brown's Facebook featuring my professor Steinbach, which gives a good overview of the organ for those who aren't too familiar with the organ. It gives like a good picture of what the sound is like, what is cool about it. So I thought it would be a good intro before we get like deep into the organ.
Hi, I'm Mark Steinbach, the university organist and teaching professor of music. One of the things that appeals to me playing the organ is that it's this physically immersive experience. You're playing with your hands, you're moving from keyboard to keyboard, your feet and your legs are playing notes and creating this sound world. Just so many different colors of sound. You get bored with one sound, you can change. And that's a huge part of the organist's art, is you orchestrate each piece because the composer doesn't give you all the indications. You have to choose what's going to work for this occasion, for this piece, and that's part of the challenge of playing this instrument.
Yep, that's it. And to ground everyone, because this presentation will be getting a little bit long, I'll be first doing a presentation about the history of the sales hall organ and then the Lowndes family who sponsored the recent renovation. And then I'll dive deep into how does an organ work and what exactly is being worked on in the renovation. And then since this project is related to the Chinese Five Elements, I'll touch a bit on that and how they relate to music. And then me and my friend Jasmine will go up to the organ and we will perform for you. And this can also be found in the program booklet that you're holding. So briefly about the sales hall organ, it's given by Lucien Sharp in 1903. And then we had our first renovation in 1949. And then in the 1980s, it was damaged pretty not well by the hurricane, and the roof was leaking water, so the organ was not in a good condition. And then in 1981, the first phase of renovation began. In 1990 is when the big restoration took place. So there's been major repairs, like they built a whole new manual. And then in 2022 to 2024, we had a renovation with the Spencer Organ Company, and this will be the focus of my presentation. So we are very fortunate that in the trend to replace organ rather than to restore them, our sales hall Hutchings Foti organ, Hutchings Foti is referred to the company that built it. We are very fortunate that it's still standing forth, and it is now the largest remaining one in the world. So we are very fortunate to have this here. And regarding the Lowndes family, so we first start with E.J. Lowndes, and we have a portrait of him in this hall. He founded the American Silk Spinning Company, and he provided musical concerts to his workers at a nominal cost. And his wife, Mrs. Lowndes, she was an amateur musician, and she also sponsored a lot of music concerts for the workers. And notably, she endowed an E.J. Lowndes annual recital that is still running today, and that I personally benefited from in the master classes. And then their children, E.J. Lowndes Jr. went to Brown, Albert Edgar Lowndes, another of the children, went to Brown, taught biology at Brown, and donated a lot of books to Brown that are housed in the John Hay Library. And then the third generation, David A. Lowndes, is the son of E.J. Lowndes, and he went to Brown. And then his children, Grace and Charles, donated a practice organ in Orrick Library in memory of him. And the family also sponsored the recent sales hall renovation. So this is what the practice organ looks like. It's very new, and we're very fortunate to have this gift and very fortunate to have them sponsor our renovation. And just some basics about the organs. Organs have stops, and these stops control different ranks of organ pipes. Rank refers to a set of pipe that has a very distinct sound. So say like festival trumpet versus strings. That will be different ranks. This is what I see up there on the manual, and these are the stops. And this is the stop list. So what's cool about the organist is that we directly control the frequencies when we combine these different stops. And we also control the timbre. So it would be like the kind of quality, the kind of color of sound that we get, and this is controlled by the different types of pipes that are being used. And the main two ones are reeds and flutes, and I'll get much more into that. And how the keys are arranged. The names may seem a bit confusing, but it is important to have an idea of what these names mean to know which word is referring to what. So you see that there are many different manuals, pedals, and all. They're called divisions, and they're supposed to each have a very distinctive sound and serve a distinctive purpose. So the pedals will be for the bass voices. The choir, so the lowest one, has a clear sound, perhaps some solo sounds. The grate is kind of the majestic backbone of the organ. And the swell usually has a box that can be opened and closed, so it would be the division that you can control how loud it gets. And this is what a swell box would look like. And a proper name would be the expressive pedal, and it's Venetian style of blinds, so they open and close, and when they open and close, that's how you control the wind and how you control how loud it gets. And then there's also a crescendo pedal that when you use it, it would automatically add more stops for you so it gets louder. And then there's also couplers that we can rely on. So for instance, I got some sound on the swell, but then for instance, for me, I'm really short, I cannot reach the swell, or I want the sound of the swell on the grate, and I can just use a coupler and move it down on the grate. And this is where I get into what is being worked on our organ. So these are the pipes that are in each division, as you can see. And this is the pedal. So we got a new swell and choir. So the shade that I was talking about, we got a new motor for it because it was not fully closing before. So yeah, the sound, you cannot control it that well. So yeah, it should be fixed, and we replaced it. So you can see it's the blinds over here. That's what I'm talking about. And then more about how does an organ work. This is where I get very kind of into the mechanical engineering of each specific part of the organ. So in these quotes I found, Kirk said, organ consists of pipes worked by a blower, switched on by keys on a keyboard. And just a simple definition in Wikipedia said, a pipe organ uses moving air through the pipes, and the air is supplied by bellows. And as we can see, pipe organ is an instrument that has pipes, has an air supplier, and has keyboard, and relies on the air movement to get the sound to sound. So I found a good diagram of each step of the organ mechanism, and I'll be going through it with you one by one. So first regarding the, I forgot to move the diagram better up. So how does the organ get the wind in the first place? That's the first step, so it's here. You can have, there's some Asian technology and some classes at Brown even built a water organ. So in ancient technology, they would use the water and the air pressure induced by water to pump that air. Or in medieval times, you also get like some manual pumps. There would actually be people in various scales, there's some smaller, some bigger, that would pump the bellows. And nowadays, you don't get some people who are doing the manual labor just to make the organ sound. We get electric motors, and that is called a blower. Okay, now we get the air. How do we get that air into the pipes? And that's when we get into the second step of we need to regulate the pressure of the wind. And most commonly, we need a reservoir. And it just basically means it's a place that has constantly pressurized air, and you can just, like on demand, release the air into the pipe. That's all it does. And there's some specific fancier versions of reservoirs, for instance, a concussion bellow or winker that is externally added when necessary to further enhance the control of the wind pressure. There's also a thing called a tremolin that opens and closes really quickly, so the wind enters and exits really quickly, and you get like a tremolating sound. And why am I getting so in-depth into these regulation, you ask? It's because each one of these that I'm mentioning, they're being worked on in the renovation. So firstly, with the reservoir and the swell is being restored, as it was failing before, and if we don't restore it, the whole organ could be unplayable. So that's kind of a big deal. So we're glad that it's being worked on. And then regarding the winker, so that's the external attached device thing. We specifically attach one to the festival trumpet, which is a type of a rank of pipe, because it has a rather shaky sound before. So now that we attach one, we stabilize the sound. Regarding the tremolo, we replaced the one in the swell. And how does the regulated wind get into the pipes? This is the third step. And now there are mainly two types of chests. So one would be the electro-pneumatic wind chest, which basically has a pouch underneath each pipe, and it releases air into each pipe. That distinction is very important. Whereas the other type is called the slider chest, and that one is for each note. So as you can see, it has a slider that slots into the spots. When the holes don't align, there's no wind. When they align, every hole is aligning. So it's like, for instance, note C, for all sorts of different pipes, they would all rely on the same slider. So it's good because it's simple, efficient, but it also has to rely on very sensitive key action. So it can get like unstable or slow if the whole of the organ isn't that regulated well. And this is an issue with our organ's wind chest specifically, because we originally have an electro-pneumatic wind chest. But then it got replaced to a slider chest in the 1990s renovation. That becomes a problem because that's not the original chest where the pipes are built on. So the pipes don't sound good on a different type of chest. So what the organ builders decided to do, because if they rebuilt an entire chest, which could be doable, it's just way too much budget and additional work. They decide to do a complete tonal finishing on the instrument. And what does that mean? They basically would start with a rank of pipes, for instance, a festival trumpet, right? And then they have somebody go into the organ and they find the pipe and they listen to each single note of it and listen for if the sound is even, if one note is like suddenly too loud or soft, and they even it out. I like to think of it as a fancier version of organ tuning. But instead of just tuning for whether the pitch is in tune, they adjust for much more nuanced things. So this is a very labor-intensive process and detail-oriented process. And regarding the key action that I just mentioned that a slider chest has to have, traditionally, traditionalists would prefer mechanical or tracker action organ, which basically directly releases the wind into the pipes. But then the problem is that you cannot move the keys too far away because it's a very direct action. So there's various types of pneumatics, electropneumatics, and electric actions that uses pneumatics or electric impulses to kind of release, like when you press a key, that action's gonna induce an opening in the pipe and have air go into the pipe. That's what it's doing. And they all have their pros and cons, but basically you have less control over it. And as for the types of pipes, the flue pipe is the majority, and you can think of it as similar to if you've played the recorder in middle school. It's basically similar to how it works. You basically get wind from the toe, and it goes up and strikes the mouth, and wind comes out. So think of the tiny hole in the recorder where the wind would come out. And reeds, basically, you can think of them as similar to clarinets. They have a beating tongue that opens and closes the wind, and that creates this distinctive sound for them. And I found a better video demonstration than I can ever explain the pipe, so I'll leave you to watch this explanation by Nora Hess.
My name is Nora Hess, and I'm an adjunct professor of organ at the Brigham Young University School of Music. Today, I'm going to show you some organ pipes and demonstrate how different types of pipes create different types of sounds. I'm also going to explain to you how to sort organ pipes into 4 main families of tones so that even on a very large organ, you can look at a stop name and know in advance quite a bit about how it will sound. This is a typical organ pipe. Pressurized air enters here at the toe of the pipe and splits at the lip of the pipe here to set up a vibrating column of air inside. The length of the pipe from its mouth to the top is called the speaking length, and the vibration of air along the whole length produces the pitch that you hear called the fundamental. Organ pipes that produce sound by splitting air over their lips are called flue pipes, and they are the most common type. When air vibrates in the pipe, however, it doesn't only vibrate at the fundamental pitch. Higher pitches called overtones are produced as well by air vibrating at a half, a third, a fourth, or a fifth of its length, and so on. It is the volume of the overtones produced by each pipe that make differently shaped pipes sound different. In general, we group organ pipes into 4 different families by the way they produce sound and the type of sound they make. The widest scaled flue pipes belong to the family called flutes. This is a flute pipe. You can see that it is wider scale than the other pipes. It also makes a sound that is rounder than the other pipes. In other words, the volume of its overtones is softer. The second family of organ tone is called principals. Principals are medium scale pipes, like this one. Principals are generally found on the grate, and you can often see them front and center when you look up at an organ's pipes. They produce the traditional sound we associate with organs, where their overtones are readily heard at a moderate volume. And here's the flute pipe again, and then the principal. Notice the bright sound of the principal when compared to the flute. Because the principal is narrower, its overtones are louder. The narrowest scale flute pipes are found in the third family of organ tone, strings. This is a string pipe. Notice how much narrower it is than the principal and the flute pipes. For comparison, let's hear the principal again. Listen for the high pitches mixed into the sound. String pipes produce sounds where the fundamental is significantly softer relative to the volume of the overtones. This is somewhat similar to the sound stringed instruments make. Before we move on to the fourth family of organ tone, I have two more pipes I'd like to show you. This is another flute pipe. You will notice it is made of wood, but the most important feature of this pipe is that it has a stopper in it. Listen to its sound. Now listen to our open metal flute pipe. You will notice a couple of interesting features of this pipe. First, you can tell by its sound that it is definitely a flute. Its sound is also quite a bit more mellow than even the open metal flute pipe. The stopper in the end changes the sound wave by reducing the number of overtones that can be even produced by this pipe. In fact, any closed pipe will automatically belong to the flute family. Second, it has a much shorter speaking length than the open flute pipe, but it produces the same pitch. In fact, its speaking length is exactly half of the speaking length of the open pipe. The stopper on the pipe forces the sound wave to bounce back to its origin so that its fundamental pitch is exactly an octave lower than its length. This is the other flute pipe in my collection. You will notice that, unlike the other flute pipes, this pipe is tapered so that it is wider at the mouth than it is at the top. Tapered flute pipes are called hybrids. They produce sounds that lie in between pipe families. For instance, this pipe is about the width of a string at the top and about the width of a principal at the bottom. The sound it produces lies somewhere between the sound of a principal and a string. The fourth and final family of organ tone consists of pipes that produce sound in an entirely different way. These pipes are members of the reed family. Rather than splitting air over a lip to produce sound, they actually cause a tiny reed to vibrate, which vibrates the metal and air around it. The outer portion is called the boot. Air entering the boot sets this little reed in motion. The reed is tuned by adjusting this wire up and down until the desired pitch is reached. The upper portion of the pipe is called the resonator. You will notice that no air enters the resonator from the inside. Instead, the vibrating metal reed sets up a vibration in the resonator, which modifies the sound by amplifying or dampening various overtones. The shape of the resonator determines the tone color of the reed pipe. However, the length of the resonator does not have to be the same as it would be in a flute pipe, because the pitch is determined by the reed and the tuning wire, not by the resonator length. You can recognize reed pipes on sight by looking for the boots and the wires. This example of a reed pipe sounds like this.
Yeah, and for the next portion, I get into what exactly is being done to each type of pipe in our organ. So I first start with the wooden pipes, and this is the ones in the grate. They aren't a major problem item, and they worked on the wooden pipes as part of the tonal finishing that I mentioned earlier. They tune it by adjusting the tuning caps that metal thingy on the top, and they can adjust the loudness by modifying this block of wood at the toe or at the bottom of the pipe. And basically, as part of the tonal finishing, they would have somebody in the organ listening for, oh, this pipe sounded a bit too loud, let's adjust the wood. That's mainly what they did. With the wooden stoppered pipes, they have a letter in the stopper, so that thing there. And it is a problem because it was not in a good condition before. So they had to remove the pipes from the organ, bring them back to the workshop and work on it, and put new leather into it. And remember the stoppered pipe that was mentioned in the video and how they can be half the length of what it's supposed to be. So we have a 32 foot, but the longest is a 16 foot because it's stoppered. But 16 foot is still pretty big, and the problem is that the stopper of this pipe would kind of drop down. And because the pipe is so big, then it makes it very hard to retrieve the stopper back. And they would have to actually walk out and climb down to get it back up. So that's a problem. So they had a new stopper design for it. With the canistered metal pipes, the cap was not fitting well, which causes tuning issues and instability and all. So they had a new cap for it. With the reeds, that, as you can hear, has a very distinctive sound. Mainly, overall, they are not in a good condition, and the organ builder told me they would tune it and it would go out of tune very easily because there's a lot of dirt and dust in the pipe. And they also had to remove the pipes from the organ and bring it back to the workshop to work on it. And as you can see in the photo, it's a very labor-intensive process, because the pipes are so big. And there's also a video from Professor Steinbach that, yeah.
I got it.
Okay, you all right?
Oh.
Yeah, I think it should be just back there that they had to find some way to bring the organ pipes out and bring them back out of Saleshorn into the workshop. And even just the part of moving the pipes out and putting them back in, it's a lot of work. And exactly what is also worked on. So for reeds, they have the tuning scroll, and it was basically flapping in the air, and it cannot be tuned before. So they built an entire tuning scroll for each of the pipes. And then regarding the racks, because the chest issue that I mentioned, how the 1990 renovation completely changed a chest, and it just completely messed up the racks because it's a different chest design. So it got to the point that the pipes were actually collapsing in the organ. So that's not good. And yeah, they either built some new racks, or as you can see in the photo, they tied some strings up to at least keep the pipes standing up. And then there is an issue that in 1990 renovation, the organ builder kind of cut down the reed pipes by a little bit to have a brighter sound. And they basically rebuilt a new upper area to revert it back to its original condition. And it is this area that I circled. And for those who are wondering about the metal color, because I was really curious and I asked about it, the spotted metal is made from lead and tin alloy, and it is more malleable. So you would see that the scroll, it would be made of that spotted metal because you need to keep moving it around. Whereas you can see at the bottom, it's a single color, and that is zinc. And it has a very good support, so it is good to be used for the stem. And spoiler of my performance, I have a section that I chronologically use each of these pipes that are being worked on in the renovation to demonstrate how they sound now after they're being renovated. So stay tuned for that. And I'll touch a bit on the 5 elements, 5 faces in Chinese medicine because I'm also drawing onto these theories for my creative portion. So basically, Chinese medical system, it's a holistic system. And that holism extends to interdependence of humans and the natural world, and also the interdependence of organs within humans. And they understand organs not as a very physical organ, but more of a system of functions. And health to them, it's more about a harmonious balancing and functioning. And pathology would mean that something is imbalanced in the system. And the 5 phases or the 5 elements are 5 elements derived from observations in the nature. And they don't literally just mean the elements, but more like they symbolize patterns and characteristics and cycles of seasons and cycles of human lives. So metal, water, wood, fire, and earth would correspond to fall, winter, spring, summer, and late summer, and also the life cycle of humans. And then on top of that, the 5 elements, 5 stages also correspond to 5 organs, and the 5 organs correspond to 5 emotions. So that's very neat. And I mainly relied on this book, which I talk much more about in my booklet if you want to know more about why exactly I use this source and not anything else, not other stuff, then read my booklet. But basically, based on this book, I summarized the author's arguments on how which music element, which key, which kind of phrase or tempo would correspond to the 5 elements, 5 organs, 5 emotions. And this is the foundation that I base my creative work on. And yeah, we can have a bit of time for Q&A if anybody has any questions. No questions?
Hi, I just have a quick technical question. When you do the tuning, I forget the word that you used, the tonal finishing. What does that actually look like in practice? Like when you're in front of the pipes, what is actually done to them in order to tune them and change like the timbre and different things like that?
Yeah, so you can kind of turn to your back if you want to see the organ. So there would be a person sitting on the manual who would be like pressing keys. And there would also be like, if you can see the open door that leads to the pipe, somebody would be inside the chest in whatever division it is. And just finding even the pipe, it's already very hard, but yeah, you gotta find the pipe that corresponds to the exact note. And then depending on which type of pipe it is, you would adjust it differently. So say like the wooden pipe with the block of wood at the bottom of it, then you would like this one, you would pull the pipe out and then work on that piece of wood until it sounds like it's balanced. And for other pipes, there's other ways to do it. And yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Thanks for your explanation. It was wonderful. Um, just back to your project, are you playing something that you compose or something that has been written from someone else?
Yeah, thanks for asking about that. Otherwise, I would not go that into depth about it. So I wrote the poetic text myself and the music myself. And you can find the poetic text in your booklet. The music, it's too hard to get it printed, so I didn't get that printed, but I relied on the principles that I described just now. And I also had a brief program note just explaining what I did, where I drew my influences in the program notes section if you're interested.
Hi, thank you for this presentation. I'm curious to hear about your experience playing the organ before and after the renovations. Were there any changes that you have made to your technique or things that you've now been able to do that you couldn't do before? Like, I'm just curious to hear how you've noticed your playing change based on the renovations that were made.
Yeah, that unfortunately I do not have the experience to answer that question because I only studied organ for a year, and when I started, the renovation's basically done. So I would not be the best person to ask about it, but you could speak to Professor Steinbach. He should have a lot to say about how that experience is. Any more questions? If not, we can move to the second portion of this event, which is that me and my friend Jasmine will be going up to do the performance. Before I start, I'd like to give some acknowledgements to people that made this event possible. So I would like to express my gratitude to the Contemplative Studies Initiative and Brown Institute for sponsoring and funding the event. And special thanks to Anne Heyman Hart for the logistical support. And huge thanks to the technical support from the media team, including Lex, Miranda, Geoffrey, and what was the person's name? Louis. Louis. Yeah, sorry. And thank you to the people involved in contemplative studies, 0520, Tai Chi Qigong traditions of energy cultivation in China. So Professor Di Fiore, my peers, the TAs, who gave me valuable knowledge and feedback. And thank you for my acupuncturist and my therapist for also giving me the knowledge and skills that made this event possible. For the organ side of things, I would like to express gratitude to Professor Steinbach, Joseph Rotella from the Spencer Organ Company, so the main organ builder that worked in the renovation, and the Lowndes family, especially Grace, for the generous help in giving valuable information and advice for me. And then I would like to extend my gratitude to family, friends, and people who showed up today, people who wanted to show up but couldn't, but they're enthusiastic to watch the recording. Thank you to engineering friends who advised me on how the organ works. And thank you so much, Jasmine, for partnering up with me to make this project possible. And Jasmine herself is a fantastic writer as well, and translator as well. So I'm very honored to have Jasmine partner up with me. And thank you to my parents for helping me access the sources, and my grandparents for their kind of musical talents in one side of the family and the other side of the family, giving me the opportunity to build the skills that made it possible for me to run the event today. So yeah, thank you everybody who made it possible and also came today.
Something does not feel right. The rustle of feelings and sounds signals such. Sufficient fix is only temporary, never sustainable. Deep work cannot take place unless some things are taken out. Paradoxically, to rebuild things, we clear things out. To regain control, we relinquish control, emptying in a way that keeps the whole intact. Sitting with the discomfort of emptiness, feeling your capacity for new experiences open and expand. Unknown presence howling at night. uncomfortable embrace of the dark sky, uncanny caves of midnight, unwelcoming familiarity that greeted me. Looking at where things used to be, no longer aligned meticulously. Life used to flow with breath and vitality, no longer pulsing successively. This empty sense of brokenness, this void that devoid my capacity to feel alive. Constantly shattered, tattered, the missing part in me, eating me alive. Cascading girth of towering dirt, cowered a formidable blanket of earth. Years of accumulated pressure and hurt. We had to insist, no, it is worth the worth. Aging channels too tight, too narrow. Leather leaked as bellows became brittle. Former brilliance, lingering shells of yellow, shriveled and surrendered to the malleable. Fate placed in the hands of other beings, autonomy no more, tainting Yao Ming. Like a heavy lump on the lungs, stagnating, the breath shortens, slows, and starts dissipating. No, I insist. You must persist. The age, the repression. You must resist. No, I insist. You must get out and loud. Get what you deserve. Standing tall and proud. Nothing new can be built on top of sorrow. We must cling and empty it. Keep it hollow. Those autumn leaves that piled on the side of streets, they culminate and must be cleaned. To fix, you must stop fixating. To take control, you must relinquish control. To move forward, you must move back. To grow up, you must be young again. To build, you must destroy. To learn, you must forget. Return to the original state, uncontaminated, pure, empty. Empty of preconceived notions. Empty of thoughts, feelings, emotions. Empty of past, present, and future visions. Unaffected by influences, unleashed from your prison. Only when you're empty, you have the space to see things clearly and truly as they are. Only then do you have the ability to take control and dictate things exactly the way you want to be, stable and still at the empty center, gradually expanding your sphere of experience, working at your edges patiently with grace, letting your rhythm gently guide you, going only as far as you're comfortable, allowing your comfort to gradually expand, gently guide through unfamiliar territory, listening to the wisdom of your own body. As things get taken down, they make more space, one thing at a time, taking it out, expanding wide. The capacity to experience widens, the need for judgment falls away. By taking things out, you are now ready to build. The feeling of a destructive higher power depriving you of control. Things out of your power, one that overwhelms and leaves you no capacity to be on your own. Water can break, water can overwhelm, but water can also calm, water can flow. Water is flexible. When you learn to embrace the fear and unknown, it can bring forth myriad sublime possibilities. Shrills and howls shriek through the night. Drowning chills of fear down your spine. Ominous cloud hints oppressively through the sky, casting a thunderous foreshadowing shadow. Mercurial danger hidden behind every liquid potential. Damp, misty air covertly conveys the message of danger. Whisper of the vapors congregate into cacophonic chaos. Invisible flames hidden in every corner, ready to break. Overcrowded, overworked, built on unstable foundations. Aged and hastily replaced, drained by the rain. Any slight slip can cause a spike. Every action puts a drain. We never know if this could set off the chain. Like an overbearing mother, like an overbearing monster that refuses to leave, almost falling in, sucked into the whirlpool of disaster, suffocated by a force so massive that defies human constraints. Violently tossed around, body and mind no longer controlled. Like a helpless hamster reluctantly plunged into water, stripping away the layer, their natural protective coat, disrupting their regulation, distrusting signals from their bodies. In a state of frantic panic, no longer able to restore balance. Residing in the beating building's heart, walls trembled, floor shook. Sonic intensity muffles and engulfs like a massive river. Decades of destruction by the drip-dropping of water. Wind effortlessly resonated in dysregulated leagues of metals. Dysregulated but resistant to tuning, regulating. Every effort at amending goes to the opposite amendment. Untrammeled, but unable to stabilize a self-cohesive sound. Held back by fear and faulty equipment from going forward. The space between heaven and earth is like a bellows. It is empty but lacks nothing. The more it moves, the more comes out of it. It is empty yet infinitely capable. When all the sound ashore is muffled, all that remains is the sound of your breathing and the soft rustle of the waves. The shrouded privacy, sublimity in the sea, one learns to lean in, find comfort, and live in the midst of disharmony. Let your senses be flooded, your mind be overwhelmed. Embrace the big scheme, a higher being of what you want to be, where hope and beliefs congregate, love and loss oscillate, where lost can be found, gone, and the present becomes one. From unstable shakiness to regulated and stable, being empowered and in control. Instead of things having control over you, let your efforts build and culminate until they resound in a choir of harmony and brilliance. Rescue fractures, repair damages, restore color, renew designs, recreate support, regain brilliance, readjust balance, recover control, reclaim power, revive its life. Rescue fractures, repair damages, restore color, replace outdated, renew designs, rearrange positions, recreate support, regain brilliance, readjust brilliance, rebuild replacements, recover control, reclaim power, revive its life. Rescue fractures, repair damages, restore color, replace outdated, renew designs, recreate support, regain brilliance, readjust balance, recover control, reclaim power, revive its life. Made from snippets and scraps that were picked up from the place that gave joy and vibrancy to my summer, a music representation of the time spent with people who define what love means to me, a free-flowing mixing of themes and inversions, an existence free from judgments, concealments, and references understood only by those that matter, flexibly making the most out of limited circumstances. Out in the field, doing and playing around, instead of sitting, stuck, and stagnant. Now is the time to recognize how far you have come and the people that made it all possible. Opportunities and nourishment could give rise to overthinking, though. Absorb the nourishment, stay grounded in the present, and feel the solid foundation of legacy and love that allowed you to reach heights unimaginable before. Coming empty, hopeless, lonely, piles of scraps that no one wants to repair, rebuild, unfixed, out of balance, unwhole, feeling worthless, spiraling downwards, out of harmony, kindly soothed by gentle lightning cast by loved ones who are always staying hopeful, seeing value, feeling worthy, cherished, welcomed, sensing sunshine, here in darkness, shining warmly. How to accept closeness. We bridged how to repay presents you gifted. Fixing begins, healing renews, aiming that we remain stable. Stable into ages coming. Self-reliance, self-dependence, self-sufficiency, self-sustained. Hard work needed from me. Feeling the weight future confers, but opportunities await. Grateful for the stable concretes that your effort relies, provides, gives space to thrive. Unworried, herein me lies new me, that we rebuild renewed, that stands, honors your love and your support.